When the Second Amendment was written, guns fired 1 round a minute. Now, they can fire over 100. Guns have evolved over the years. So should our gun laws. Shane Claiborne. Guns and gun control have been a hot topic and a massive point of contention among many for years. People who should never touch a weapon still manage to get their hands on them because of loopholes and carelessness, negligence, or criminal activity. Responsible gun owners are often shamed and shunned because of the actions of the irresponsible ones. However, no matter what side one is on in the debate, everyone can agree that the loss of life at the hands of some gun owners is disgusting and unnecessary. Robert Crimo III was born on September 20th, 2000, to parents Robert Crimo Jr. and his wife Denise. The family lived in a middle-class home in Lake County, Illinois. Robert's upbringing was anything but happy, though. When he was just 2 years old, Denise left him in a car with the windows rolled up on a hot August day. She pled guilty to a child endangerment charge and had to undergo evaluation at a child advocacy center. This was hardly the last time police would be involved with the Crimos, however. Between 2009 and 2014, police visited the family nearly 20 times. In 2010, Crimo Jr. reported that his wife struck him with a screwdriver, but later retracted the statement. After repeated domestic violence calls, officers recommended that the couple go through counseling or separate. They are no longer together. Robert ended up dropping out of high school in his junior year to pursue his music career. He began uploading his music online at age 11. Under the stage name Awake the Rapper, he uploaded to Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Music. His music videos contained depictions of mass shootings and people being shot by the police. His online activity reflected his interest in violence and death as well. In April 2019, police were once again called to the Crimo house because Robert attempted suicide. This was handled by mental health professionals. Police were called back in September when it was reported that Robert had threatened to kill everyone. Officers seized 16 knives, a dagger, and a sword. Crimo Jr. claimed the weapons were his, and both he and Denise denied that Robert made any threats. Robert wasn't charged, but a clear and present danger report was filed against him with the Illinois State Police. In December 2019, Robert applied for a firearm owner identification card, which was sponsored by his father because of his age. Despite police visits and the clear and present danger report, Robert was granted the permit in January 2020. In his interviews for the permit, he simply said he wouldn't hurt himself or others with any weapons he owned or purchased. When he did purchase new guns in 2020 and 2021, he passed 4 separate background checks. There were many red flags against Robert wanting to purchase firearms, and on top of his interest in, or even support of, violence, he was a vocal supporter of Donald Trump and frequented far-right gatherings. He often wore Where's Waldo garb and was confrontational in counter-protests. Everything came to a head for Robert on July 4th, 2022. He took a Smith & Wesson M&P 15 semi-automatic rifle, 3 30-round magazines, and a Kel-Tec Sub 2000 to the Ross Cosmetics building on the northwest corner of Central Avenue and 2nd Street in Highland Park, Illinois. He climbed the roof using an unsecured ladder and turned the celebration in the street below into a nightmare. The Highland Park Independence Day Parade was set to begin at 10 a.m. They began their route. Then, at 10:14, the shooting started. Robert unleashed 83 rounds into the crowd of spectators and participants. Soon, the scene was flooded with over 100 law enforcement officers. Robert kept shooting until they approached the building where he was stationed. Donning women's clothing and hiding his facial tattoos, Robert fled into the chaos and panic, evading police. As he escaped, his rifle slipped out of his bag and was quickly seized by the police. During Robert's shooting spree, amid the float music and screams, 7 people lost their lives, and an additional 48 were injured. The victims were aged 2 to 88 years old. One victim ended up paraplegic. When he fled, Robert led police on an 8-hour manhunt. Those who remained behind investigated the scene of the shooting. They said the crime seemed very random, yet very deliberate. With the unused Kel-Tec in his car, Robert drove to the Madison, Wisconsin area. He ditched his cell phone in Middleton and contemplated attacking another July 4th celebration. Luckily, he decided against this. A driver from Waukegan and his passengers noticed Robert's beat-up 2010 Honda Fit driving southbound on U.S. Route 41. They called 911 and spent the next 13 minutes relaying information to the operators. Robert was then stopped by North Chicago and Lake Forest Police in Lake Forest, Illinois at 6:30 p.m. He was apprehended without incident. After Robert's arrest, FBI officers raided his home in Highwood. They seized 3 rifles, 1 shotgun, and 1 handgun from the residence. Law enforcement believed Robert had been planning the attack for weeks, though his motive remains unclear. A few thoughts came up that centered around Robert's Nazi and neo-fascist ideology and anti-Semitism, but nothing has ever been confirmed. A Highland Park rabbi said that 3 months before the shooting, Robert entered the Central Avenue Synagogue during the Passover Seder and was asked to leave. On July 5, 2022, Robert was charged with 7 counts of first-degree murder for the deaths of 64-year-old Catherine Goldstein, 63-year-old Jackie Sundheim, 88-year-old Stefan Strauss, 78-year-old Nicholas Toledo Zaragoza, 69-year-old Eduardo Uvaldo, 37-year-old Kevin McCarthy, and 35-year-old Irina McCarthy. The next day, Robert confessed to the shooting and was held without bail. A preliminary hearing was scheduled for July 28th, but on the 27th, the Illinois grand jury indicted Robert on 117 felony counts of first-degree murder, attempted murder, and aggravated battery. He pled not guilty, and his trial was scheduled for February 2025. Another hearing was held in June 2024, and it was expected that Robert would plead guilty to 55 of the 117 counts and would immediately be sentenced. This was not the case, however, as he declined to change his not guilty plea. Jury selection for the trial began on February 24, 2025, and the prosecution dropped the aggravated battery charges the same day. On March 3rd, just a few hours before the trial began, Robert pled guilty to the remaining 69 counts against him. When signing his trial waiver, he signed both his name and Donald Trump's. His sentencing occurred on April 24th. Robert was given 7 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 2,400 years for the counts of attempted murder, which would be served consecutively to the life sentences. The following day, he was transferred to the Stateville Correctional Center in Crest Hill to serve his sentence. Following the shooting, survivors and their families have filed several lawsuits against Smith & Wesson, the Illinois State Police, and Robert Crimo Jr. Prior to the civil suits, Robert Crimo Jr. faced other criminal consequences in relation to the shooting. On December 16, 2022, he was arrested without incident and charged with several counts of reckless conduct. These charges were based on his sponsorship of his 19-year-old son's gun license application. He was released the following day on a $50,000 bond. On February 16, 2023, he pled not guilty to the charges involving the gun license. On November 6th, he took a plea deal and pled guilty to 7 misdemeanor counts of reckless conduct. He was sentenced to 60 days in jail and 2 years of probation. On November 15th, before his imprisonment, Crimo Jr. showed up to the courthouse wearing a white shirt that had black lettering on the front and back, which read, "I am a political pawn," and "Laws, Facts, Reality." He turned the shirt inside out before entering the courtroom, and the judge told him he would be held in contempt of court if he ever did it again. Following the shooting, Illinois passed an assault weapon ban bill that was signed into law on January 10, 2023. The bill introduced magazine capacity restrictions for rifles and handguns as well. Owners of any weapons considered assault weapons who had theirs before the bill was passed were expected to register their guns with the Illinois State Police within 300 days of the bill's signing. A variety of government officials released statements about the shooting, senseless gun violence, and expressed their sympathies to the survivors and their families. Every step of the way, signs were missed or blatantly overlooked. Robert Crimo III was clearly a threat to others, showed an undisguised interest in guns and shooting violence, subscribed to dangerous ideologies, and passed background checks he really shouldn't have. Officials all along the way passed the blame and didn't do a thorough enough investigation when Crimo's application came up. And in the end, 7 people lost their lives and dozens of people were injured. The Highland Park shooting was just one of over 600 mass shootings that took place in the United States in 2022.